can a clown tell us about living better?
So we wear the wet nose for your safety and ours. It's like a condom of comedy.
How do we experience pleasure?
Pain needs something, and pleasure or joy does not. It's just joy.
Can we be enlightened and amused?
I mean, I've done some crazy shit, and there is a mystery, and it makes me very pleased.
This week, Adrian Danzig on 9 Questions with Eric Oliver.
How are you, Eric? Good morning.
I'm good. Dre, have you been a clown?
I've been one in the past.
All right, tell me about your clown.
So I went to graduate school for acting and directing, and as part of my studies, I studied Red Nose Clown. You know, it's a form of improvisational theater. Look, okay, so with Red Nose, the performer goes on stage with nothing but this, this little red nose. And it's a mask, right? It's called the smallest mask because it gives you almost nothing to hide behind. And the red nose makes you do like this deep dive into yourself. And the character that comes out is kind of like this shadow self, like another version of you that might exist in some weird alternate universe.
And Adrian is a red-nosed clown. He grew up in New York City. He joined the Big Apple Circus at the age of 12, and he's basically spent most of his life as a performer. I met Adrian last year and immediately knew that this was somebody who has an interesting perspective on the self. And sure enough, he's great. I was so happy with the interview we had.
Oh, and he's hilarious.
Yes, and he's that. All right, so without further ado, let's go on to 9 Questions with Adrian Danzig.
What you're about to hear is the edited version of Eric's 4.5-hour conversation with Adrian. If you would like to laugh a lot, head to 9-questions.com, where you'll find a link over to our Patreon page, where we are happy to make the full version of all of our podcasts available to our Patreon supporters.
Adrian, welcome. What are you?
Well, I mean, my big question about your questions is, what am I? Like, what the fuck does that mean?
Okay.
Because I am carbon and water.
Okay.
What?
Yes, you are.
What am I? Like, it's such a, like, that's a cool question, because it is, that's a book in itself.
Yeah. The question about what are you is it's interesting, because it's an invitation to say, okay, what interpretation of this being do you want to embrace? And then the question was, well, what is that interpretation doing for you? So the problem with carbon and bag of water, it just doesn't. It's not a lot of work to work with.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, on some level, I'm a grower. Like, I'm a growth thing.
Okay.
I'm something that's growing, and I'm pretty. So if I'm made of growth, right, then that's my commitment.
Okay.
My commitment is like, I'm gonna.
Well, that's question number 2 in some ways, isn't it?
Which
is question 2 is, what is your purpose?
Oh,
shit. See, these is how the questions do have an order to them, because they kind of no, it's fine. We can go into question 2 now, because that's what. It's kind of, insofar as this is designed, this is just kind of how it's...
Well, but see, and you can see, like, so now our question, now this idea of growth is like totally morphing into exactly subversion, right? It's like, oh, growth can happen in so many ways.
Yes.
And you can just replicate that, like a cancer thing. And then that's just like, oh, one thing grows. But what if you think of yourself as multiple things? And so then you're a community. How do all those things grow? Or how
they grow? So let's think about this. I've actually been thinking a lot about this. Like, biology has totally, I'm a kind of a late comer to biology. I think biology is the most subversive worldview out there, because it violates so many of our intuitions about, say, that things have a purpose, so what they're doing is because of their purpose, and that there's a moral core to the world. One of the ways that it does so, let's think about growth and subversion. Biology says your purpose is just to perpetuate the life force. Do it however you can, and maybe you perpetuate the life force by clocking in at the job. You know, whatever's going to perpetuate the life force is going to win. How you do it, well,
Yeah. And if you don't do it, then you probably die.
but then there's an interesting thing about growth means not getting ossified and not getting stuck. And so it's always finding a way to not get stuck and settled.
But it's always, I don't know. I think that there isn't like and for my mind, there don't need to be infinite ways to find ways to not get ossified. It's like the idea is like, oh, why? It's that old 3-year-old thing. Why?
Okay.
Why? Oh, why would I think that? Why would I believe that? Why would I behave in that way?
Yeah.
What would I have to think and feel?
So is that your purpose? Asking why?
It might be. I mean, I really loved that as a parent.
Yeah.
I loved that. And the game I played with it was that. It was just like, get me to the point where I say I don't know. Like, that's the end of why. I don't know. Dad doesn't know. That's like, but it could take a while to get there.
Yeah. Did you ever try that with your kids? It's like,
Yes.
how long we will play this out until we get
Hours.
to the end where
But
this
but
dies?
when I learned that the end was I don't know. Like, that's an important thing for me to learn as clown. It is not because I said so.
Yeah.
It has no clarity. It is the edge of knowledge. I don't know. And there's wonder in it. And there's honor in wonder. There's, it isn't like it's a full wonder. It's not a nihilistic void. It's a like, oh, wait, there's more.
We're going to come back to this, I think, in question 6.
All right. Damn it.
No, I'm just flagging it because I was like, okay, this is all very circular here.
Yeah.
So you see, we're going to be kind of circling around the same stuff a lot. Who are you?
Hello, I'm Adrian.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm not sure yet. I don't know right now. I'm recently divorced. Last week.
Yeah. Which is, that's really appropriate because the who question is about who you are in relation to other people.
No question. But and big in that right now is I'm a dad.
Yeah.
And that perhaps is the most transforming thing I ever did. And I also as a kid, I never dreamt of that. I never thought, I'll be a parent.
Yeah.
I never thought of it as a mind-blowing experience. And it absolutely has just shattered everything in the best way.
Why did you become a parent?
I became a parent. Yeah, my wife wasn't interested in kids. I'm a freaking clown. I love kids. I actually like, give me a kid, give me a dog. I'm pretty happy. Maybe that's part why. It's because I love being around kids.
But was there any? I mean, for me, I had that too. I love kids. I love that kid energy. I love the play.
Yeah.
But I was terrified by the responsibility of it and the end of freedom that being a parent meant.
Well, that's interesting because you had a more Apollonian idea of what it all meant at the time, and I was just like, I was a grad student, and I was like, I think things are going to go well. And I
got a good hunch about this.
Yeah.
thing.
And Leslie, my wife was had shifted from being like, I have no interest in kids to being like, it's happening. I want to have kids. And I'm like, well, great, let's go. Like, that sounds great.
Yeah.
Like when she wasn't, we weren't.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. That's ultimately her choice to make.
Yeah. Well, I mean, ideally it would be a us thing, but in that,
But
I was very at ease with that.
Yeah. No, I mean, the person who's going to actually bear the child gets about 99.9% of the decision making.
Yes, that's how it happened. That's how it happened both times. But the experience of it was I don't know that there's anybody who can actually understand how to prepare for that. But the allness of it is amazing. And I think that I was confident about being able to do as well as I was dealt. Like, I thought that was a foregone conclusion. And I had, I had from when my dad died, I actually saved that money. Like, I didn't, I was very clear that like that was going to let me be an artist, which is why it took me 6 years to get out of New York as opposed to 1. So partly my confidence was just that, I can do this.
How has being a parent changed who you are?
Yeah, I have no way of knowing how it hasn't, right? Like it has in every way. Like I was like right now, I'm not with my kids. they're at my house. And 3 months ago, that had never happened. There would be no way that I wasn't making dinner for them tonight.
Yeah.
And it happens to be that they both hate me. No. No.
They became teenagers.
Yes. Well, it became, well, I mean, no, this is real.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
real, right? Like, so they don't necessarily want me there. Like, it's
Yeah.
way easier.
Oh my
sometimes,
God, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And like, so I just called Simone and say, hey, I'm taking this is taking long. She's like, oh, good, I'll have some ramen. And I'm actually, again, this is a growth thing, right? I'm like, oh, 5 years ago, that could have challenged me.
Where does your ego sit?
Yeah, this is where I'm slippery, because I'm protean in that aspirational way. Like, I would like to not have an ego.
You'd like to not, but inevitably we do. And here's the question. Is there one that, it's like you look in your closet and there's all these different shirts, and then there's
Right.
one that ends up on your back more than others.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I'm a teacher right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the one. I'm either that or somebody who wants to hold space for multiple kinds of development at the same time. And that's easily a teacher. But it's also like, essentially I believe in healing is going to come from collaboration. Is going to come from better listening in order to be affected, so that's what I learned by being an actor. I think I went into acting to learn that. I went in without that skill as a 13-year-old, and it took me a couple decades to learn that, for my defenses to be pulverized by that.
What are your dreams telling you?
Do you mean like my night dreams, or do you mean like my aspirations?
What are your dreams telling you?
Oh, you're an asshole.
They are whatever you want it to be.
I have become a manifester again. I spent 6 or so years not being able to manifest the world. But before then, I was in the position of like, oh, I have to, and like literally said to my wife at one point, we have to be very careful about what we aspire to, because it will happen. So let's be very intentional.
All right, so specify that a little bit, because that seems a little vague.
So I was making my money by working in a collaborative clown theater of my own devising in America, where theater is not paid for.
Yeah, so it sounds pretty good.
Well, but like, that's impossible.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. There aren't other groups. There are 2 other groups I know who could say that. I mean, it's like that just, well, no, that's not true. There are 3.
But
it's very crazy.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, wow. Mazel tov. That's fantastic.
Yeah. And, but that was like, so there was a point at which I was like, this is impossible.
That's your dream.
Impossible. It's impossible.
And what is that dream telling you?
It was telling me that we thought we were really fucking hot shit. And then 2008. And what I learned was, oh, we were the fumes of a good economy.
Yeah.
Like, so that was the right time to do what we were doing. We thought that, what we were becoming was the thing that theaters were using to generate audiences under 40. Oh, we'll use this form of theater to get those people in.
Yeah.
This subversive form of theater.
Yeah.
That was because those institutions could afford to have that want. And then when 2008 happened, they couldn't.
Yeah.
And they started producing Oklahoma.
Dreams telling you anything else, or do you want to move on?
Well, no, I mean, so dreams are telling me I'm in that space again. I'm in the space. I got my ass kicked by my marriage ending. And even before that, by the ending of it, I stopped having, powerful, positive energy. So I'm excited these days because I literally can feel that physically. And so my dreams are telling me right now that I'm working on growing my body. So I've always been leg strength, and I need to, partly as a way to protect against being a decrepit 90-year-old, I want to even out how that works.
Are you getting imagery in your sleep dreams about this?
My last imagery in my sleep, my last remembered sleep dream was that a friend of mine directed a show at the Big Apple Circus, actually, and called me to say, you have to go on. And it was my old clown partner. I had to go on without learning a damn thing. It was like kind of a naked dream.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm in school and I'm naked.
Yeah.
But I was overwhelmed. I was so pleased. I literally.
So it's a happy dream.
So that's like the stress, like the what would normally have been anxiety or something stress about, like you have to go on with that with no preparation.
Yeah.
I like reached down and I picked up a big piece of celery and I bounced it on my nose and I walked up. But yeah, that's happening in my dreams. What I can't remember. That was a couple of nights ago. I don't remember another. I don't remember dreams every night anymore.
What moves you?
Joy, boring now. Growth.
Let's talk about joy. What's joy mean? How do you experience joy?
Is a good question. It's one of the questions I was asking over the pandemic while I was teaching. How do you experience joy in your body? Like we're like literally doing experiments with that.
Did you discover?
Yeah. So, here it is. You look around your house, look around where you are, and anything that brings you joy, first you basically have to prepare your body to feel things, because your body is usually prepared not to feel things. But if you open up, or if you are open, and then you encounter something which brings you joy, which is easily available in your home, what happens?
So I'm looking at this picture. It's on my wall, and it's from a friend who's an artist named Monica Redmoon. And she was in India, and she got inspired by this temple she was at where women go and offer their hair. And so when I look at that, and it fills me when I think about the joy that it gives me. The experience is, there's a sort of effervescent quality that it does, and that's the joy.
So where do you, can you like, let me go into like, where is it in your body?
It's in my chest.
It's in your chest.
Yeah.
Is your chest collapsing, expanding, moving forward, moving back? Like, what is it doing?
It's flowing. It's flowing.
It's flowing. It's
a
flow, a sense of flow in your chest.
Yeah, or of unblockage.
Ooh.
See, because a lot of the day, I carry around these sensations of blockage in my thorax, and it varies at various points. And
you and I are the only humans who use the word thorax.
It's such a good word.
I have used that with students who are like, "What are you saying? Is that a Dr. Seuss word?" Yeah. So it's flow in your thorax.
Yes.
That's an experience of joy for you.
Yes.
So I would, yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I was like, okay, what if now how that's joy?
It is.
Yeah, it's
and
thoracic flow.
And there's a great number of these reports that I've had which would sync up with that. More openness, more movement, dilation, release. Sometimes people talk about crinkling in their eyes or crinkling at the sides of their mouth. So there's some tension that can come from that.
Yeah.
That some people talk about, like there's a zillion things. People talk about more breath. Some people talk about like a clenching.
Yeah.
Right. Completely the opposite. But I'd say 85% of the people talk about an opening as an experience of joy, a release.
Yeah.
More flow.
It's remarkable how this is really the origin of this question, is when I work with my students, when I ask them how do they experience their emotions, they're like, oh, well, they experience an emotion by describing it with other emotion words.
Yes.
And I'm saying, well, you're just using vocabulary to describe vocabulary.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're really trained. I don't know if in our culture, maybe other cultures are better.
I mean, this is about, I am translating that language into embodiment, into the language of embodiment. Why am I doing that? Because clown works in the moment, in the physical. What does it mean to do something? Acting is doing, not to hypothesize a way of doing it or a how, but actually the doing of it, the performance of the thing. The task of embodiment is, what does it feel like to do that? Not what does it mean to do that? What's the experience of doing that? And can you allow that? And then, the task of the actor or the clown is, can you allow that experience to travel from the inside of you, where it is easy to be masked, to the outside of you in a way which generously shares it?
That's a very good answer to what moves you. Who's writing your life story?
I have no idea who's right. I mean, I'm not.
I love it because, a lot of people I talk to are like, of course I am.
I do believe in this, like, this, I talked about Aaron Brockovich for a second before, but like this idea of like I think that's who we are. I don't think that we, the way what I usually say, when I'm talking about this in a class situation is like, I don't think we're John Wayne. I don't think we're fully formed. Like, John Wayne's going to come in, he's going to right wrong. Something wrong's going on.
Yeah.
John Wayne's in that room. That shit's going to stop, because that's who John Wayne is.
Yeah.
But I actually believe that it's an Erin Brockovich world where Erin Brockovich is in the room and just finds that she can't take it. She's not going to live in a world where that's happening. And so she says something. So this is a world in which, going back to the Greeks, when Hercules kills all the demons, he leaves a kid alive so that she'll have offspring, so that other heroes will have demons to prove themselves on. Without the demons, there cannot be heroes. This idea is an old idea, but it's true. That's how my life is. The only things I'm good at are the things that I've had to overcome. Like, I had to master those things. I had to face it.
Well, then this begs an interesting question here, which is, do you have to then go find demons to slay, or the demons just happen to be there?
I haven't had to.
Surplus. Hercules ain't been here for several generations.
No, but I think all you have to do is relax another layer, and there's going to be something there. Like, if you just try and get out of the way, your fear is going to bubble up. Your self-perception, it will never, as far as I have experienced, stop. I guess that just means I'm not a bodhisattva, right? That's an unfathomable journey in a quite hopeful way. So who's writing life story? What is there? Is there a life story? Is there a life? Is there one thing?
Some people I know have a grand narrative of their life. They have a plan. I'm going to do X, then I'm going to do Y, then I'm going to do Z, and then I get to be in the lucky happy land.
That happened to me when I was 30. I hadn't achieved my goals, but I remember thinking, when I'm 30, I'll know who I am and what I need to do. And I got to be 30, and I was literally sitting there waiting to be struck by, I know it. And then I thought, I do know who I am, and I do know what I want. It was like a release into that.
What, describe that moment.
It was a release into I don't have to be more than I am. It was the first salvo in the war of you are not enough. It was the first time that I answered that very deep thing inside of me by saying, you are, you do know. And it was incredible. I had asked my friends to bring me green things. That's what for my birthday. I wanted green objects, green things. It was probably because green is the color of the heart in the chakra system. And I was just grow heart.
Yeah.
And I was sitting with this plant. Somebody gave me a plant, which I thought was so inventive, and what an amazing green thing to have given me, meta green, And I was like, I'm doing the thing that I'm doing. The thing I'm doing when I'm 30 is the thing that I'm doing when I'm 30.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing. I'm done. We're okay.
Yeah.
It was an experience of self-acceptance that I hadn't imagined. And I was just in the paradigm of non-self-acceptance. You have to get to that I am not enough.
Do you own your shit, or does your shit own you?
I own a lot of shit. I own a lot of the shit that I create. And I think I'm actually doing that professionally now. I think I'm doing it privately. No, people think of apology as something you have to do if you make a mistake, as opposed to thinking of apology as a way to reaffirm your connection with your friend who you just did something that wasn't so great to. Just even the idea of I'm just thinking of that as that's a form of owning my shit.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. It reminds me of, I have a lot of students who are the children of immigrants, and they carry around this enormous sense of guilt. And so I say, well, let's take, instead of you feeling guilty all the time, because what good is that doing you? How about we see if we can turn that into gratitude? And
but where do we get why? That's not a class. That's a teacher. That's not a class. There's no class where you're let's learn how emotions are just amounts of energy in a certain shape, and that they can transform fairly easily from one shape to another. That's not anything anybody's ever learned or been asked to teach.
Yeah, working on it.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's,
That's what this project is.
I mean,
So-
ensemble. I mean, and in this way, like that's exactly what we teach in clown. The easy one for people to get to is stage fright. Like there's an increased amount of energy in your body, and it's crippling you. What if that increased amount of energy in your body was exactly what you needed to be in the moment you're in?
So do you think is the best exercise or the most important lesson that you teach in a clown class?
Something is in motion because something is still. I can run. My feet are moving. If the ground was also moving, I would not be moving. The ground is still, so I'm moving. But that's happening also every time I move any of my bones. It's a huge metaphor in terms of like,
Right.
How do we create focus on stage? Stillness and movement. Well, what if there is no movement without stillness? There is a quality of joy which is paired to, well, what's the opposite of joy? You could go in any direction.
Yeah.
There's a strange paucity of our what are considered our quote unquote positive emotions. There's very few.
I have a curiosity about this. It's not even a theory. Nociceptors. They're basically nerve endings that are tuned to very, very specific negative cues. So all of these different ways that you experience pain, you have specific nerves for that kind of pain. I have not been able to see the equivalent of pleasure. Pleasure is something that's more holistic. I think that's the thing. Like I feel joy in my thorax. Pleasure is a very diffuse signal to us because it can afford to be. Pain needs to be much more specific. It needs a more specific information pattern because it needs a very specific response to it.
Pain needs something, and pleasure or joy does not.
It's just joy. How do you find love?
I find it well. I find it pleasing. I find it attractive.
Yeah. I find it on the internet.
I did. Yes, I did. And it was good. How do you find love? Well, I actually really think, I've become like a stoic on this one. And like, it's like, it's the thing that's there. I know that everything is made of love. I think I know that.
But how do you find it? Because it's not always visible.
Yeah, I think it's a path. I think you can learn that path. One of the early things that you do in acting is you realize, you have to love the character you're playing, which is a crazy thing to do if you're a human who has been taught not to love who they are. There's some really interesting shit there. But then you're playing a rapist. And then you realize, in order to behave like this person, I have to think that I own things. I have to believe in ownership. Like not stewardship, ownership, that an object is something which I can own and break and it's okay. If I believe that about a China bunny rabbit, I can believe that about a person.
And then when you do that, then suddenly it works?
Well, when you do that, you have to. The thing that grows at the same time is compassion, which is a form of love. So, wow, given 3 changes, I am anyone.
Yeah. So the Stoic view is, okay, everything is love. But love is probably the thing that scares most people the most.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know that.
I think the thing that people are most terrified is about is losing love.
Oh, love, yeah. Well, fear is. I
may be wrong in that, but
no.
yeah.
But I think fear is a protrusion from some larger being. Love is a part of some larger construct. There is not love. I'm not a Platonic in that way. I don't think it exists in some void, in a closet that you can pull in. Things aren't separate.
Do you think there's like a metaphysical love that pervades the universe?
Well, I can say I've had visions of it.
Yeah.
I've done some crazy shit, and there is a mystery, and it makes me very pleased. Like I don't know.
Because it does relieve the finality of death.
Oh yeah, that's something that people are afraid of. I think that was part of like what was my gift is my dad died when I was 23. By that time, I was able to move through that slowly. Like I was guilty. I was so guilty that there was some pleasure in my father's death for me.
Yeah.
This experience of freedom was pleasurable. I didn't say that out loud for a decade. I was so ashamed of that.
I think that's pretty common.
Yeah, but I think it was to be able to. I feel very lucky to have been able to move. I was not born into a family in which it was a given that I was going to be able to feel that ever. That's something that I did. I did that because I was in pain about not having emotions.
I have this conversation with Thea a lot. Sometimes she'll say to me, "Oh, you're so shut down. You're not available." And I say, "No, shut down is a feeling."
This is actually literally an exercise in clown. The bad, the false, and the ugly tend to move downward and inward. And so again, this and the good, the true, and the beautiful tend to move upward and outward. Easy to share joy. So literally in a clown situation, we are not trying to trick you into feeling that we're sad. We're trying to find a real reason to really be sad in front of you. I call that a trap. Like we set a trap for ourselves so I can be sad. It's a feeling.
It's about accessing feelings probably that we can't otherwise access.
Yeah, but we're literally like this is a form or a craft in which we're like learning how to allow sadness to move upward and outward. And literally the first step is to physically feel the sadness and then raise the face to the audience. Soften the neck, soften the back. Just literally do it. Just walking somebody through the experience of that, and people will fight it with different amounts.
Or some won't because they want to access that.
Those are great clowns.
Where are you going from here?
I'm not sure. I might be teaching more, or I might be creating groups of teachers more. That's where I think I'm going.
Performance is not something that seems in the immediate future?
You know what? There's people who I want to perform with,
Uh-huh.
and there's projects that I wouldn't turn down. But I'm not. I've become an amateur. I've become a lover of that work and not a professional. And it's so much more joyous. It's radically joyous.
Yeah, I feel that way about history. I never wanted to study or really write history because I like reading it too much.
Yeah, there's something about that being promoted outside. What is that? You get promoted beyond your capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. It's an art. Theater is an art. You're creating a fictive reality in which people really feel. Like, that's an amazing thing. That's a very cool thing to be doing.
Well, I think it's a cool thing to be doing it because you're with the people as they're experiencing
in an
it.
embodied. Yes,
I mean,
in
this
an
is the
embodied
challenge
context.
of being a writer because you write the book and then you have no idea what people are experiencing when they're actually encountering it. But in performance, there is that immediate
And so,
exchange.
right.
Yeah.
And then if you go one further, and instead of having, as many people do, a manipulative interest in like, oh, and I want you to feel this way. And this is totally me for 30 years. Yeah, I want to make you feel this. I want you to feel that. I want to see if I can take you on this journey. In clown, we propose a set of stimuli, and then we listen to how it affects the audience.
Uh-huh.
And 3 of them are laughing and 4 of them are not. And that affects you.
Yeah.
And that's the next moment. That's cool. And I know that I'm building toward this other thing that I've got in my back pocket. That's the plot.
Have you ever done a performance where it's a clown performance and you're trying to? I think of Andy Kaufman in some way. Like, I'm going to try to alienate as much of the audience as I can. That's going to be my moment here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't done that, but I love it. And I think of Andy Kaufman as he's working with sincerity. He's like, the material is like, is that real? Is what he's doing real? I'm not sure if I should be understanding what he's doing as something which he's doing to somebody else, or if I'm understanding it in terms of like, oh, somebody's choosing to do that, or if he's doing that to me. Am I in this? Am I in this? Am I here? Did I pay for somebody to read Great Gatsby to me?
Yeah.
Did I do that?
Yeah.
That's what he said he was going to do, and then he's doing that.
Yeah.
Why would I do that?
Yeah.
That's an amazing. That feels more like Rothko to me. That feels more like, okay, now I'm going to sit and watch my eyes adjust to these colors and how they interplay. And I'm going to just observe that. That's cool.
Is that where you're going?
Oh my God. If I could do that, that would be so cool. I would love to do that. I would love to be going there. The place I'm going has to do with, there's no shame where I'm going. Or shame is a part of the game which is so handleable. It's not annihilating. I'm going there, and I'm going, co-creation is the mode, interdependence. How do you answer all these questions?
Well, that's another. Well, I'm writing a book on that.
Yeah.
So that's how I'm trying.
Well, you
to.
better.
And now I started in the book. I couldn't figure it out, so I started asking people.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
This is a great conversation.
Yeah. Let's do it for another 17 hours.
Yeah. Andrea, you're editing this one.
Sorry, Andrea, we've never met, and I'm naked, but I'm sorry.
So, Eric, what did we take away from Adrian today?
We took away that clowns are a lot of fun. Anyway, I guess which we should all know. And not creepy, but really kind of interesting and insightful. This was a wild conversation. It went on for a long time. And, we have the edited version here. And there's the full one, for the Patreon supporters. And what struck me about Adrian is how he and I in some ways are very similar. We have kind of a very similar kind of life perspective, but we come at it from very, very different ways. And I think it kind of reflects my understanding of the self. The self has kind of two really big dimensions to it. On the one hand is order. The energy that's within us needs to be replicated. It needs to survive. And so nature orders our life force through DNA, through our physical bodies, through all our psychological routines, and our sense that we want everything to be predictable and just so. But there's another dimension to the self, which is vitality, and that is our life force. That's our energy, and it courses through us, and the whole purpose of living is to allow this energy to express itself. We are energy systems. We typically experience our vitality in our emotions and our actions and our behaviors. And so these two things, these two dimensions, there's order and there's vitality, and they're oftentimes in tension. They need to be integrated. The task of really knowing yourself is about pulling them together and integrating them in an optimal way. And we can think about order and vitality, interestingly enough, through this idea of sort of the Apollonian and Dionysian kind of dichotomy. And this came up in my conversations with Adrian. I'm a university professor. I'm very Apollonian. I'm very ordered in my way of understanding the world. I like logic. I like science. I like things with sort of clear delineations. And Adrian is full on Dionysian. I mean, he's all vitality and energy and association and creativity. And it was really interesting in our conversation seeing this dynamic tension between us, because we're very similar in some key ways, but we approach life from very, very different kinds of perspectives. And it makes me appreciate the importance of bringing, for me, for example, I need to bring more Dionysian energy into my life. I need to oftentimes let go of all of this need for order and coherence and structure, and kind of let myself feel more and be more open to what my emotions are bringing forth towards me. I think Adrian, on the other hand, might say, maybe I need a little bit more Apollo in my life. I need a little more order, structure, coherence. I don't want to speak for him. He seems to
I
be
think he'll
pretty
be
happy
I want to
his...
go straight, just Apo.
So that's, I think what I take away from this, it just kind of reminds me of one of the big tasks of knowing yourself is trying to find that sort of balance and integration.
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. If you liked it, be sure to subscribe to hear more wisdom from interesting and hilarious guests in the weeks ahead.